Yes, and I feel like you just know when it's right. Like if you and it's also having confidence in what you're doing and having, everything locked in legally on the back end, like making sure that you have proper contract and all of your disclosures. Like you've got to protect yourself.
Yes.
Like that's how I never paid a dime to market my business. Like, God bless.
Yeah.
But it's also because I did the work and I went out and I made space. Even when wasn't having to do all the installs anymore, I was still showing up and seeing the client, asking them how their kids were, how they were doing. And that's how people remember you and that's how people refer you out.
All right, everybody. Today's conversation is something that I find in a lot of the event industry Facebook groups or just on social media in different places. People are always having questions about pricing. And it's because often we don't understand our true cost of us being able to run our business or even how much is going to we want to make. There's so many different factors of it. So I'm super excited about the conversation today. I have an amazing guest who is a co-founder of, I feel like, one of the top balloon companies that I have personally came across that does amazing arrangements. And they also have a franchise as well. So for some of you that are not wanting to struggle through the process, maybe a franchise is going to be a great option for you. So thank you so very much for being a guest today, Jessi.
Of course, of course. Excited to be here. We've always loved working with Jessi, so I had to come on and chat with you all things about pricing. Love our conversation. So excited to be here.
Yes, and it was funny because we were chatting before this about like how impactful pricing and understanding our cost is, and I was like, hold on, no, let's not get really into it right now. I was like, let's talk about it on this podcast because I know that you've
Yeah.
probably seen on chat groups yourself where I'll say, oh, what should I charge if I'm doing this? Does this mean that it's too low? Or I just see all types of things, and I'm like, that is such a relative question.
Oh, yeah.
And not
Yes.
understanding.
Yes. We answer questions. I have people DM Balloon Therapy all the time to ask, just to double check. Even people that have come to our past conferences that we used to host, our BT cons, we did a huge section on business and pricing because it's so important. Because when I got into the industry, there was no standard for pricing. So we had to literally come up with something that made sense where we could be successful and pay our people, and have to keep those margins where they need to be.
Yes, because I feel like sometimes people are going off vibes, or also too, I find that in this space it tends to be more female entrepreneurs. So depending on like self-worth and like charge, that also kind of gets in the way of us charging what we need to charge inside of our business. I've noticed that where you're like, I just don't know, will anybody pay? I'm like, yes, there are people that will pay even more than that, but if you don't have that belief in yourself.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it's just being confident in your product, doing your research, know what things cost, but also knowing the value of your time and the value of the research that you have to put in to find things and to source things and the shipping costs and there's so many things that we get charged for that we don't even realize. When we look at a bill that we get in the mail, we don't really look at all of the fees and everything. We have to put that into consideration when we're supplying, a payment. Even if it is for a fun party. That's the problem I think with some people in the event industry is they don't realize, yes, we want to get that great content and curate that beautiful experience, but that doesn't pay the bills. We all got to eat. As my business partner would say, we all have to eat. And my staff, they're my number one priority because yes, I want to make beautiful things, but at the end of the day, they have bills to pay, they have families, um, and they're my family, and I want to take care of them too. So, but even if you're just a one man show, and it's just you. Even if you're just going out there doing things, you have bills to pay. You're providing a service. It's why if you didn't want to get paid, you would just do it for fun, and not have a business. So we have to make sure we're charging correctly because websites that we were talking earlier, like Target, they're not going to tell you oh, by the way, we just hiked up the price of wine glasses $10, even if it's our most basic type, that we used to sell for a set of 12 for 15. Now it's double. We don't look at that. We're just like, whoa, okay, I guess this is what they've always cost, you know? Um, but it's important to look at.
Yes, and I even later in this conversation, I even want to dig into thinking about team members because I think sometimes even when it is a solopreneur, it's sometimes we're okay with certain things when it's only us, but then what happens, we're like, oh, I want to hire people, but because we don't understand how to price so that we can even pay someone to even help do something, because if we're too low, that means you're almost always are going to have yourself limited in or stuck into doing everything because you won't ever be able to hire people. But we'll dig into that further. But what I would like for people to do is you can share a little bit about yourself and how did you get into balloons?
Oh, girl, I don't even know. It was a wild. It's even hard to explain, but I'm actually a therapist. I'm from a family of therapists. It's our business, what we do. But I've always loved to have that creative outlet to do something. So I was working in a private practice, kind of following in my dad's footsteps. He's a psychiatrist, and my mom is an artist. So is my sister. My sister paints. She paints sneakers. They do all sorts of things. So it wasn't like I wanted to do that because I'm like, no, I want to do the family business, but I wanted to do something creative and artistic. So I started planning events on the side on the weekend. Um, and I was hired to do an event for a friend out in Los Angeles. Went out there and I was driving and I looked and saw this crazy thing under an underpass in LA. This artist at the time, her name is Geronimo. Um, she created, the Swedish artist. She created this like giant balloon cloud under an underpass. And I had never seen anything like it. I was like what? That is insane. So got home and started researching. I'm like, this would be incredible if we could start doing these like giant balloon things because when I was just coordinating events, I was realizing the time that I was putting in. It just the amount of time wasn't really worth it for me. Like especially staying till 3 a.m. at a wedding and doing drunk people out. I do love the like bringing people joy. I think that's where like the psychiatry part comes into the whole play. But I wanted to come up with a product or service and really dial it in because I dabbled with florals, I dabbled with different parts of the wedding industry, but really thought this could be my thing. I was like, because Dallas didn't have anything like it at the time. There was a company out in Australia that I figured out had kind of started to do a similar thing, but there were no classes on how to make these clouds of balloons. There was no, I was like, I'm sure that's not helium, surely, because helium's expensive. And so what I basically did was I just started buying, had no idea what kind of balloons. I knew that the balloons I bought at Party City, rest in peace, were not great quality. So I started researching. I found a balloon store here in Dallas and walked in there. I was kind of looking around like, what is all this? Okay, I'm going to try some stuff. Um, but there was no info at the time. There was a lot of gatekeeping going on in like the balloon world with the few people, the old mom and pops that did exist. So I was like, all right, nobody's going to teach me anything. I'm just going to figure it out on my own. I mean, it's not hard, right? So just started testing product. I came up with a way to make a garland and count the number of balloons in it because I realized I can't, if I'm going to start charging for things, I have to know how much my product costs. I have to know how much time it takes me. But that took 6 to 8 months of me testing things. So I did one install at my parents' house. We sat down, I bought a roll of chicken wire because I'm like, okay, it's a grid. I could tie the balloons through, pull them through. Horrific. Like our hands were bleeding. I was like, my mom was like, what are you doing? Like, this is no skip. Like, he was just like, are you okay? I'm like, I swear I can figure this out. I think this could be a money maker. So I figured out a way to use fishing line. I tested fishing line. To like thread it through. I figured out different strengths of fishing line worked better. And that was actually one of my dad. My dad is a big hunter fisherman. He's like, hey, you ever tried doing something like this? I was like, oh, let me try it. So found out a way, instead of tying the balloons individually and tearing my hands up, tying them together, twisting them together. So came up with a quad system and then made a pattern, counted my balloons. And I was like, all right, well, I guess I can put one of these up on my Instagram for my event company and see what happens. And I had 2 or 3 people reach out and they were like, you do this? And I was like, yeah, all the time, I was like, oh, what did I get myself into? So, and my husband at the time was very supportive, or he's still my husband at the time. He just made, yeah, he's an angel. He was like, all right, are we doing this? I can help you. He's a firefighter. So he was also very helpful in figuring out like some engineering things for me, tying different types of like knots on different things, hanging stuff outside. So we did a couple graduation parties, very small, but at the time I was like, this is insane. This is going to be a thing. So did that and posted it on my Instagram, and it just absolutely took off.
You already know HoneyBook can make your life easier. However, you may be in a position where you know that you're not using the automations or any of the really cool features to the fullest of its capacity. Let's be real. Learning how to set up a CRM can feel challenging. So if you're tired of DIYing your CRM so that you can actually start to convert clients and feel the ease from using this platform, it's time for you to check out my Done For You services so that you can get access to workflows, templates, and automations. My Done For You services are intended to make your event business thrive. So let's take the headache out of the process and get started together, because you deserve to be able to focus on what you want to focus on, which is your business, which is to make money inside of your company. So are you ready to have a system that's working for you? If so, click in the description so that you can get a free consultation with me today. All right. No, but what you shared was so powerful,
Um,
because with one, you going into it, knowing that I need to actually know how many balloons I'm using. Like that's the first thing that jumped out at me, was you immediately went into thinking about like keeping track of that information. And anyone that knows me knows that I am a stickler on understanding like how much things, how long does it take you just for efficiency, because everything is efficiency, and then also making
yeah,
sure you're using your time
yeah.
correctly. So I guess what actually got you to think about that in that way in the beginning? Because everyone doesn't. They're like, oh, pretty, and not think to keep track
Yes.
of any of that.
Yes. I think the hard part of it, well, I started really thinking about my time and cost and all of that when I was in the midst of event planning. Um, because I wasn't providing like a physical product, but the amount of time that I was spending doing things was just, I don't know, it really started to get me to think about the event industry and costs and things, but there was no information out there about anything regarding like what you should charge if you're an event. And I'd worked for an event planner um initially when I first got into it, just kind of an intern for her, but never really asked her about her pricing. Because I wanted just to see how it all worked first. And then um so after I did this first and counted everything and wrote down how much, the bag of balloons cost, how much the fishing line cost, how long did it take me to make the garland, that's when we figured out this could be a huge moneymaker if we charge properly. Because I saw from what a company in Australia was charging for, a balloon, and but any website you would go on, and there was also this incredible company in Nashville called Vroom Vroom Balloons, and they were kind of one of the OGs of like hand lettering and making these incredible, you know, blobs of balloons on these buildings. But all of their websites say like, send a fill out this form for pricing. And I'm like, you guys know that I'm just looking. I'm just shopping around trying to figure out. And I also didn't want to do that yet. I wanted to just see if I could figure it out on my own, challenge myself to do it. But my first event that I did for a big company after only doing a couple garlands was Bumble. they reached out because they were doing a huge influencer event and at that time I didn't even know what an influencer was either. Like it wasn't that big of a thing yet because this was like pre-COVID. There was some people that I knew were like really big on Instagram, but I didn't really get that culture yet or anything about it. Um, so I went to this event, um, and I also had some really cool people along the way that like helped me get in because I feel like I'm a big person on karma too and being a really good person to other people. And unfortunately, in the event industry, there's way more competitive fear. I think we want to be competitive, but also there's enough business out there for us all to eat. Like there's enough out there, and I feel like I was having a conversation yesterday with somebody, their company recently had to let everybody go, and she was talking about the company culture and how to see, you know, they were like instructed not to really talk to other vendors on site, especially if they were doing similar things or whatever. For me, like that's no good. We're all doing it. We're all in this together, whether you're offering the same product or not. Like good for you, girl. Let's get after it. Um, so this first event Bumble, I was able to like I charged them probably a tenth of what I should have. So saying that, my first go around with pricing was horrific. Like I did an $8,000 job for like 800 bucks. But I was unsure of my product still. I kind of knew how to price, but this was something where I was doing a giant installation on the side of a building where these products that we use now to like attach to things, those did not exist. There were certain types of command hooks that existed, um, that over time, which now I wish I would have been more thorough of like gatekeeping a few of my products and using that to like launch my own stuff at the time. But I'm a very nice person, so I'm always like, this is what you should use. It'll help you. Um, so and that business side of me, my business partner, I was like, hey, you gave away that, you gave away that. We could have manufactured that. I'm like, I know, but I just wanted that person to have a good event in North Carolina. But other people were able to take advantage of that and create these products. But anywho, then they're done. Did this whole thing, and after that, it was the most stressful thing in my entire life because it was hot outside. But I had all of these incredible people look at like the Rachel from The Bachelor, which I didn't even watch that show, but I recognized her from TV was there. All these major influencers were there, and we had put floral in the balloons, which had never been done. Only in LA they had done one of these, and I was like, this is good. And after Bumble, it took off. Like Chris and I, we lived in a townhome on Cedar Springs in Dallas, and I filled that bitch up with balloons every day. Like we both were working full-time jobs. I would leave. I was a school counselor at the time at a high school. Um, it would that to me, I miss it every day because those kids were so important to me. Like that was my reason at the time was like guiding these kids. It wasn't in a great area of town. I specifically wanted to work in this area, um, because I came from nothing. My dad like was born during the Great Depression, and his hustle mentality was none of like nobody. I couldn't name a person now that had his hustle mentality. Like somebody born during that era, they just look at things a little different. So it was just it was nuts because I I wanted to teach those kids how to hustle. So it was a hard thing. I wanted to dive into this balloon business because I knew it could be insanely profitable if I reeled it in, got my product right. So that's when, yeah, we were just hustling, still working our full-time jobs. Chris would be blowing up balloons at the fire station too. I would pick them up after work and drive. We were at U-Haul every single day, every single day. And they don't have like a
But
frequent flyer
even with
program
you
at
sharing
all.
that, I think that a lot of times, even when I talk to, because if we're honest, a lot of people jumped into entrepreneurship maybe out of necessity or the glamorization of it during the
Yes,
pandemic. And I, I often
yes,
will tell people that it's best to do it strategically, because then you allow yourself to really not work from the space of desperation. And then I find that that's what sometimes
Yes.
will happen when different types of event businesses are out there, is because they need to be able to bring that revenue in. They're willing to take an event for $500 just because they're trying to, even though it's going to take them 2 days to do.
Oh my God, I know, but that's such a
Mm-hmm.
slippery slope. Because then once you do that event for them for $500, they're gonna refer you to. They say, oh well, all everybody here, I'm gonna tell them about you. Of course, they're gonna tell their friend how much they paid, right? Like, and then that's when it snowballs. And so a lot of it is just having faith in your product, but also you can't do what everybody else is doing too. You need to really challenge yourself to come up with, I think, something unique. And that's what I do every day for BT, which it was hard when we were expanding so much and when you're rolling and everything's coming and you're the big dog, you really don't have to come up with new things. But for me, that's where I find joy in the business, is doing new stuff and new innovation. Because at the beginning of the balloon industry, everything was new. Like I was putting pool floats, I was doing all this crazy. I was like, this is, and it was wild because it was all the new stuff. And I feel like we go through ebb and flow of like block of like what to be next. And then we try something and we don't like it, or, we try to push the envelope too far. But um, especially in the beginning, I feel like it was important for me. And I could have quit my job right away. But I wanted, there was a point, even my business partner was like, Jay, please don't quit your job yet. Like, I want to make sure I had faith that it was going to roll no matter what. I said, Junior, if I can spend my entire day doing this business and not just 6 hours at night, think of what I could make. And he's a very smart businessman too. He's like, hold on to your job right now as long as you can. Let's finish one more year. Let's get through it. Um, and he was right. Like it was a good decision because it gave my husband a peace of mind too for a little bit. But it was just hustle. Like, yeah, I didn't sleep a whole lot, but I still was able to bring a paycheck in for my job. And I was out there, doing the stuff on the weekends and doing it when I could. And that's I do feel like some people, though, they don't know when to make the jump. And I feel like you just know when it's right. Like if you, and it's also having confidence in what you're doing and having, everything locked in legally on the back end, like making sure that you have proper contracts and all of your disclosures. Like you've got to protect yourself because unfortunately there's lots of people out, it's like people out there that wear their outfit once and then return it back to Target. It's like there are people out there that will do anything they can to save a buck. And I get it. That's a
Yeah.
different type of hustle
And I
mentality.
think too, that's
Um,
the part about, even when I've spoken to new people that do just jump out there with not having things go through the lens of which you're talking about, I'm like, learn how. I feel sometimes the hardest part of entrepreneurship is learning how to manage yourself. And I'm like, if you aren't able to manage
oh yeah.
yourself when working with someone else, like it's very
Mm,
hard. It doesn't just magically come out of nowhere. Like this was already a part of the way you were
oh,
operating. I know that that was already a part of how I operated.
yes,
And if you don't already have that in you, you can develop it, but it's better to develop it while you're doing it around your full-time job, because then it's the sink and swim, and you never want to see people sink. But statistically 80% of businesses don't make it over 2 years. Like, so how do you give yourself a
yes,
running chance or to learn and develop those skill sets? Because based off of what you shared, even with family, like you've seen people work hard for getting things and having ideas. And even within my life, my mom was an educator, but she had a daycare center that she had developed when I was 4 years old because she needed someone to watch me, and she was able to sell it when I was 18. So I've seen
amazing.
someone still have a full-time job, but they hired everyone else to do everything else so that she could still have both. So it all comes down to
Yes,
like sometimes past experiences, because I've even said to people, because I've seen individuals that have done it full time, and I've seen it people that make full time money even around a full time job. I'm like, there's so many flavors of it, but if you haven't seen any of
Yeah.
it, sometimes you don't even know how to make these steps, what makes, and if you don't have a circle of influence, like you had Junior to bounce things off. Some people don't even have that as a resource, not necessarily a Junior, but just a family member
100%.
that can give wise counsel. So it's just making sure you do inventory of your surroundings. And if you don't have that
Yeah.
skill set, probably it's a good time to start reading or going to courses or things like that that can help you with strengthening it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I was watching, because like I said, there was no information on like the balloon industry or pricing. So more so I was just diving into like the business side
Hmm.
of pricing products, because
Yeah.
I had the creative side. Like I
Yeah.
knew what to do there 100%. Um, but it was finally, right in the first year before COVID, because we started in, I think, 2018 is when we started. We were rocking and rolling before COVID, like, because I was pumping stuff out. Everything was new. Every styled shoot I did would, I would, to save money, I would do a styled shoot. I would buy this product, make the thing, and I would sell it to somebody the next day because they loved it. They wanted that. And then I also bought product where I could get it at a discount or that. And then other people would want that for their parties. So then I could buy bulk of it and then sell that look to different people and switch it up a little bit. But I was basically creating a catalog to sell to people that would be more efficient for me as well. Um, but then so that was our first like pricing thing, was figuring out how to charge. And at first, when we came up with our pricing guide, people were aghast. They were like, "You're charging how much for 10 feet of balloon?" And I'm like, let's think about that. If a garland is 100 balloons, yes, a bag of balloons at the time was like $12. Now, not at all. Now it's like 20, $25. Oh, yeah, it's like double in 5 years. People don't realize that. And they're like, it's just balloons. I'm like, it still matters. So it's 100 balloons. Yes, fishing line, a spool of fishing lines, a couple bucks, but then you have to get an inflator. You have to blow up all the balloons. You have to tie all the balloons together. Then you have to do this technique and rope them all together. It takes about an hour to do this. At the time, it took about an hour to do one garland. Okay, how much is your time worth to do that? And then you also have to deliver it. Then you also have to put it up. And in that process, a few may pop. Then you have to hang it up. Then you have to add all this other stuff in. So at first we got a lot of pushback for pricing because it was brand new and people were like, "That's wild. You can charge." I was like, just see what I can do. Like, and also you're not seeing it in person. You're not understanding like one garland can take a, a room from nothing to, oh, there's an event in here. And then people didn't realize how much helium costs. I'm like, yeah, if you go get a bouquet from Party City, they're gonna charge you $100, and it's gonna last you one day. This garland inside could last you a month, and you can take it and use it for your business party and your baby shower, and you can drag it all over. We'll shove it in your car for you. Um, so figuring out what the product is worth, what people could use it for later, and just leaning into it and being very confident in my pricing, because at first, woo, people were unhappy. And just they didn't understand. I think more that they just didn't get it. But then when COVID hit, that's when it got real with pricing, because everything got shut down and there were no longer, events were not allowed. And so I was like, all right, I don't want to let go of any of my staff. I love them. They need to eat. They need to get paid. Unemployment, yeah, that's a thing. They could, but none of them, all of them were like, "Jessi, what can we do? Like, what can we?" I'm like, "Don't worry, I'm gonna figure this shit out. Like, I can do it." So that's when I started doing classes, and I was up at the studio every day, because this was after I quit my full time job. This was the second year. I was up there every day filming videos, every single day, all day filming videos. And that's not easy to do, especially if you're not used to it. I'm just used to being the artist and doing these beautiful things. And now I'm on camera teaching garlands And at first I was like, okay, am I going to be giving away all my business secrets? I'm like, wait. Let me put this into perspective. I'm going to be selling these classes, yes, to help support my business. And all of these people that are in the event industry that literally have lost all their work and have no longer a means to make money, how can I help them? Like whenever we get out of this, have a lot. I mean, a lot of people lost their jobs. It was wild. So that time we just leaned in and the classes took off because there were no other classes at the time. All of the other balloon people at the time, and you guys know who you are, a bunch of jerks who didn't tell me anything, didn't give me any help, didn't try to reach out. Like I was kind of the black sheep, not in a bad way. I felt like I just didn't reach out to people for advice on things because I didn't think at the time people were,
Yes.
pricing their things correctly. Um, but I'm not. I also new in the industry. So why do you want the new guy telling you how to price
That
stuff?
speaks
You
volumes,
know,
though.
it was a rough
But
time
that
in the
speaks
beginning with that.
volumes because I have spoken to people because they assume like, oh, if this person has this facade of how their business is, and they assume that they are pricing. And I tell them, like, if you're going to shop around, I'm like, a lot of them are just making it up. I'm like, they don't keep track of any of their, it's like as
Yes,
much as, because I feel like that's what
yes,
sometimes, and it's good to look around, but also understanding that what you may be looking at may not also be accurate, is a thing. Because like even when I've seen
oh,
people, I
go
mean,
on
because
and
of
on
what I
about
do,
this.
like
Yes,
I'm like, that doesn't make sense. Like it just doesn't, it won't make sense. Or even when I've helped people with evaluating like what they're doing, and I'm like,
yes,
how do you ever hire someone? Like, how do you, like, how are you making, like, if this is taking you X amount of hours, this means you would be better off
yes,
working at Target than having
yes,
your own business and not as burnt out.
exactly.
So you have to price it in a way that makes sense.
Yes. People don't realize that some people that are out there creating beautiful balloon creations, they have the means to not work and do it for fun and do it for their friends. Like a very vivid example right now to me, and I was trying to find it here on my Instagram because I don't really get on my balloon therapy Instagram too much. There was a time where I didn't want to be on it at all because I felt like I wasn't getting inspired by things. I was just looking at what everybody else was doing, and it wasn't helping me come up with anything new, right? And I want to stay on. That's always been my issue for the past few years in this business. Is like I want to see what everybody else is doing, but also I don't because I want my own creative. You almost get this like creative block because that's all you can think about is what the other people are doing and creating. But there's this artist. She's an artist, but she makes these giant helium bouquets where you'd think she'd be launched into space by holding these things. And it's beautiful. She's like a Russian lady, and and her outfit always matches these giant balloon bouquets, and people are crazy over it because it's so visually stimulating. Like a lot of the new AI stuff, which I'm thrilled about, people sending me AI photos and wanting me to recreate them with balloons that don't exist. So people will send me this picture of this Russian girl holding 1,000 double stuffed helium balloons with which probably took her and 20 other people all day to make all of this, and then she's just walking around holding these helium bouquets, and I'm like, no, she's not selling them. She's doing it for content creation, which in some ways you can get to a point where you get paid for that, but that's a long road that people don't really understand that there's a lot of like upfront capital that needs to go into that to create content for these channels where you eventually get paid back. Um, but yeah, the photos we get and it's I just remind people like some people aren't doing it to get paid in our industry. Like some people just want to make crazy balloon shit. Their husbands or their family have the means to like say, do whatever you want, honey. You can get out there and make something pretty. Yeah, or they just do it on the side just because they have the extra time. So keep in mind, not everybody who has a balloon Instagram is doing it to make money or needs to make money from it. Um, when I got into it, I wanted to make And that's why when we started Balloon Con, because we had so much demand from the classes, people were like, "Are you ever going to teach in person?" So I'm like, "Can't do that yet. We got to be, hold on, I would, but
Yeah.
like we had to be so careful with COVID. But at first, our first Balloon Con, let me back up, was right the week before
Oh,
COVID hit
yeah.
and the world like shut down. I had taught a class in Miami the month before, um, and it was for Luz Paz, who's a big balloon
Okay.
creator in Miami. Which at the time I didn't realize she was able to use a lot of my ideas for her classes. Later, she's an
Yeah.
entrepreneur though. She knew what she was doing. But afterwards, I was like, and now I get.
Yeah.
She wanted to see my technique, products I was using, um, which that's a
Yeah.
whole other spiel I could go. But then the next month we did Balloon Con and we formatted it over all of these like
Mm,
cons, Comic Con, and all those that are
yeah.
those big trendy things in LA. And people went nuts over it because my business partner and I, were able to like show these ladies who are already in the balloon industry like how to make money, how to price yourself, whether you're in New York or whether you're in South Dakota. Because that was the biggest part for them was the business aspect. And then we showed them efficiency on how to create a garland quickly, how to build something quickly because time is money. And yes, you want to make something pretty for Instagram, but if you're trying to make money, that's not what it's all about at all. Like, yes, you want a catalog of your work, but you got to be careful on like what. So after BTCon, the first one, the world shut down, and then that's when we went ham on the classes again, and people just ate it up because so many people have lost their jobs, and I get so many DMs now. People are like, "Hey, your classes taught me so many skills that whenever I was able to get rehired doing like, because I taught like a basic social media class, a basic editing class, pricing, how to hire, anything I could think of. People needed that. And it was awesome because I truly believe we helped a ton of people who lost their jobs, their means during COVID. Um, and that's where we got our franchises from. Our franchisees was from our classes from BalloonCon. People that came were like, damn, you guys have it figured out. If I don't have to do the back end work of figuring out my entire business, you're going to show me how to do it all. Hell yeah. Like, let's fucking go. So that's where we got, now we
Really?
have 8 franchises and they are
That's even
rocking
more
and
fun than the
rolling.
last time we talked.
Yeah, girl, like people, because we go out, we do a video shoot for you. I bring my best of the best, my 5 people that have been with me forever. And we have other rotating staff that come in, but I treat my people well. I always have. Like they're my family. And that's a big part of like when you hire, you have to treat your people right. Um and so that's and with pricing too, it's because I just keep going to that because it's so important. Pricing is like we're even right now, every year at the beginning of every year, we go through our entire year of books. Our accountant does it, but we also do it ourselves. Every dollar we spent, every dollar that came in, we see where it went, where we could cut costs. Then we go through our pricing guide every January 1 and we raise prices. We look and see what bags of balloons cost now because our manufacturers aren't telling us when prices go
It
up.
just
There's
creeps
not an
up and then you don't
announcement
even
on their
know. You're
front
like,
page. It's like,
hold on.
by the way, yes, they're
No.
not announcing price hikes. So, so what we're doing is we're going back through, we're comparing,
Uh,
we made a spreadsheet. We looked at, okay, how much has this company been charging us for a bag? And also in the balloon industry, these manufacturing companies are
mm,
going out of business left and right. New ones are popping up, buying in. We also looked at some of these overseas manufacturers who are asking for us to buy
yeah.
bulk, what that would cost. We don't like to really buy in bulk because
Mm-hmm.
colors change, trends change. And so I don't like to keep a lot of back
Yeah,
stock.
for
I don't think that
inventory
makes any sense.
purposes. Yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
yes. So every January 1, we reevaluate, not so
Mm-hmm.
much
Yeah.
from the staffing perspective, but from a product, like what we're charging, especially
Mm-hmm.
looking at the cost of helium. if you're doing helium, you've got to be so careful because the prices on that, I mean, the
Mhm.
inflation rate on that is insane. And you have to be careful also that you're sourcing helium from a company that does 100% natural, like it's helium, or if they're
Mhm.
watering it down at all or not, which they'll tell you, and you'll see, like you'll know if they put partial air in
Yeah.
it, which is not a bad thing, but you have to be very cognizant of that when
Yeah.
you're pricing out helium. We not only charge a helium, we charge for the
Yeah.
latex balloon with the helium in it. We also charge a fabrication fee, the time for us to make all of it, and we charge an additional
Yeah.
helium fee, like just because it is wild because they have to drive it to us. It's a whole thing. We realized
Mm.
about, I think it was about a year ago, that we were not making money on
Mm.
helium like we
Mhm.
were, because before, if I'm using air
Yeah.
to fill, air is free.
Yeah.
Making a garland, air is free. Helium here in Dallas is around
Tank.
$300, or it's like, yeah, for a
Yeah.
tank, for like the largest size tank.
That is.
That's a lot of money. And when you look at how, and a tank fills like what, 500 11-inch balloons, give or take, depending on it. So we had to do the math. Even now, if you're pricing out helium for a room, you have to look at square footage of the room. How many balloons will fill that space? Are my 16-inch
Mhm.
balloons going to be more
Mhm.
efficient in filling that space? Or if I
Yeah.
offer a mix of sizes, you have to be very careful with helium pricing in the balloon industry, because you could literally be breaking even
Yeah.
and not even realize it from the amount of time that it takes to create. And then they'll ask you to come do it on site. I don't feel comfortable
Yeah.
transporting a helium tank right now at this point in my business because there's a
Yeah.
lot of liabilities behind that. So we create everything off site. We
Mm.
have to bring it there. Whole the whole thing. So just evaluating your pricing, and we even do it twice a year. I would have to say that we also
It-
reevaluate in
It's
July,
halfway home.
because we want to make
Yeah.
sure we realized
Mhm.
our people we were buying product from. I was like, wait a minute, things
Mhm.
never used to cost like
Mhm.
this. What is going on? Um, and then asking for discounts, not saying like go into your balloon store and be like, you see how much money I bring in, but saying like, hey, do you have any, vendor
Mhm.
discounts that you can give me? And there's been companies that even have told my company to, hell no, girl, we got to make a buck. I'm like, all right, oh, all right, but just know if you give me a bigger discount, I'll just come to
And
you if you have what
it's
I
good though
need.
that you've
Um,
shared all of those dynamics about it. And like I had a question, and from what I know about your company, I think sometimes when people think custom, they think that every time we're making up prices. However, for you, y'all have set pricing on things. The design itself might be, and that's where too we get lost in pricing because we aren't present to
yes,
all of these add-ons that we can do. So custom doesn't have to be a custom price. It is actually the design, knowing
yeah,
that this star is going to cost this if you need this, and by you adding all of these together, that is what brings up your price. So if you don't mind elaborating, like
oh yeah.
how did you come up with doing this strategically, which I think is absolutely genius because nothing creeps up unless you make sure you have in your system the correct price of those individual things.
Yeah, so what we basically did was we made a pricing guide that, with, there's a million different types of balloons, right? So with our pricing guide, we made sure that we put generalized categories, and we put starting at. We made sure you're specific with your language, and you say this is it's like if you're commissioning an art piece. And with that, not a lot of people commission high-end art pieces. I had the privilege of knowing a lot about that because of my sister's work, because she's commissioned to paint things. And so her giving a set price on something in the art world does not really exist. unless it's already something that has been created. It's a piece ready for a showroom. So that's where I had to reframe and think, okay, I am offering a luxury service. A luxury service, an event. Anything for an event is a luxury service because you're not hosting your birthday party in your living room, with balloons you bought from Kroger. You're throwing an event. You know that it's going to cost things. If you want this backdrop where you don't have to touch a single balloon, which most people, after they create one balloon garland, never want to do it again. If you want us to come set it up beautiful, that's it. This is our cost, because you're paying for that luxury of transforming your room without having to touch any of it. So with our pricing guide, we made sure you have to be careful with your language in there. We offer packages in some way to make it simple, because I also want to be able to give somebody that saved up for 6 months for $150 balloon garland for their daughter's Eid say. I want them to be able to afford my services too. Like, not just the person who pays me $20K for their kid's birthday. Bless them. But that keeps the lights on. But also, it's important to be accessible. At least I thought it was, just because I grew up with nothing and hustled. And so that's why we started a pricing guide, and we started like, here's our, basic package. Starting at this. These are 3 packages we offer, but then creating a loose format where there is starting prices, but you also are being transparent. Because when I started in the balloon industry, nothing was transparent. Even if you go to Party City and there's a picture on the website or the balloons on the wall, with the numbers, you say, I want that one. And they're like, okay, that's $350. And you're like, yes, I've got $5. But then they're like, well, we got to fill it with, you want it with helium. And I'm like, well, yeah, no shit. What am I going to do with that? Well, you know what I mean? Like, what do you mean? That's all that brings with helium? And then they put helium in it. And they're like, okay, well, that'll be $27.50. And I'm like, $3. Like, what's happening? I was like, yeah, if we don't blow it up and put a ribbon on it and all this stuff. But people don't question it because it's Party City. And there's 1,000 locations, but that's how they grew their business, was they knew how to price correctly. I feel like there was things that they didn't follow the right market trends, and that happens over time, But yeah, just knowing that if you're in the event industry, if somebody can afford catering and they're not cooking themselves in their kitchen with grandma helping them out, it's a luxury service. And so realizing that, knowing your area, knowing like, I can charge different in Dallas than I can in like Pawhuska, Oklahoma. But also, don't slash your prices in half. And also, if you see somebody in town who's doing it for half the price, well, that's not sustainable for you, and it won't be sustainable for them if they're just doing it for fun right now. In realizing that, yes, some people are going to do it for free. We've had that happen in different cities where we also franchise. Like, we've been Dallas. I know the market back and forth. We're the big dog in Dallas now, because there's been balloon companies that have come and gone. I've seen them come and go because they do too many things for free, or they say, oh, well, this influencer's going to post it. How many people on that person, who's ever following that person, the big dogs in Dallas, the influencers, 90% of the people following them are not going to be able to afford my services. And that's just being very honest. And they don't, like, just very honest. Because I look at my clientele, my client list in MailChimp, and I see who's affording my services. Chase Bank is not following this girl who's wearing her Target outfit, So figuring out who are throwing these big events. Like, corporate companies are always putting on events to keep their companies happy, keep their customers happy, keep their employees happy. Like, figure out who has the buck, and it's these big corporations, it's these well-established families in Dallas. Like, yes, influencers do have a certain reach, but I've also seen that really shoot a lot of companies in the foot with like, oh, well, this person has 1 million followers. Okay, yes, but what do they do? Like, what do they share? What is their, if they're a gaming star, or like, we've just had a lot of people reach out for free things from us, and I'm like, how, and I've also to be very careful in donating to charities, to different. I am very specific because I have seen my work not get used properly. Um, for galas, yes, money from these galas goes to charity functions, but also I'd rather donate 10 bouquets directly to Children's Hospital where they take them to the oncology floor and those kiddos get to enjoy it versus me doing a balloon backdropped gala where the wealthiest of wealthy get to come take a beautiful photo in front of it. Awesome. Awesome. That's not what I want to donate to. But there are a few organizations now where I see like the kids with cancer get to come in and enjoy my work and take pictures in front of it and feel like a prince, feel like a princess. Sign me up. I'd do something free every day if that was the case. So just knowing who your audience is, knowing what it's worth, because it has taken down a lot of event companies
Not
in
just in
Dallas,
Dallas. I think
because they feel like
I don't
exposure
even think
is
it's just
there
in
and it's
Dallas. I
not.
think it's in
Yeah.
general. And like even when I like in the
Oh,
vein
for
that
sure.
I'm in the corporate space of events, I'll have someone like, "Oh, Jessi, I have this opportunity to be at this housing community and it's going to be free." I'm like, charge." I'm like, charge. I'm like, because the thing is that you'll have some that will actively and accurately, a small portion that will actively promote to help with you gathering business, but most of them just see that it's so
So
rare.
rare.
For a lot of
So
them it's
rare.
just like, oh, this is something
Yeah.
free. It's reduced my cost, or it checked the box off of my calendar, those types of things, and not
Yes.
and it doesn't benefit you. And for them, they don't realize how ultimately they're hurting quote unquote small business. And I always tell people, when I use the term small, I'm not talking about like I'm talking about SBA standards. So on any platform, if I'm ever talking about small, I'm talking
Yes.
about by SBA standards. I'm like, that's what impacts a lot of small business, is that them investing a certain amount of money, be it if they're, it doesn't matter if it's $1,000, it doesn't matter if it's $10,000. Like a client never knows how that will impact their finances. And I just don't think that businesses make that decision. They're going into it hopeful with like that desire to think that something magical is going to happen, but not understanding that really on most cases they won't always do what we think that we need them to do so that it can be beneficial for us at the end of the road.
Yes. Yeah. And it's like also, so there's a lot of balloon companies out there, right? What is going to have somebody that walks down, to their housing development, be like, oh my gosh, I've never seen anything like
Yeah.
this before. Where did you get these from?
No.
That's not the case anymore. So you have, and yes, they can tag, yes, eh, but I feel like now that there is enough companies out there where we're
Yeah.
all doing this, that we're doing it, like
Yeah.
that didn't exist really. I mean, I would say if like Barack Obama
Yeah.
asked me to do balloons for him, and somebody, and I was like, and I'd be like, like, whatever you want, and I can afford it. And there's certain people I do.
Yeah.
It's very rare, but there are occasionally
Yeah.
things that I will do on the house due to I feel like I'm going to
New
reach a
audience. Hmm.
completely
Yeah.
new audience. But I would say 85% of the time I
Mhm.
have shot myself in the foot doing it because there has
Yeah.
been
Yeah.
nothing that has come from it. Because my audience has come from me, my
Hmm.
customers have come from me, posting on my Instagram, boots on the ground, going to meet people in the
Yes.
community, shaking their hand, going to
Yeah.
events, showing my face. That has been most
Hmm.
of my business, has been
Yes.
just by getting out there, because you never know. And also it's like when you go to a restaurant,
Yeah.
most of the time it's a small business, where there are chains, but I don't go in there asking for
No.
my food for free or like, can you take half off of this? Like, I'll post about it. They don't give a,
Yeah, they
they
do.
gotta pay their bills. Like, it's, so people, I think Instagram is beautiful. It helped me build my business. I will never say a horrible thing about
Yes.
it because it's
Marketing.
free marketing. Like, that's how I never paid a dime
Mm,
to market my business.
yeah.
Like, God bless. But it's also because I did the work and I went out and I made space. Even when wasn't having to do all the installs
Yeah.
anymore, I was still showing up and seeing the
Yeah.
client, asking them how their kids were, how, how they were
Yeah.
doing. And that's how people remember you. And that's
Hmm.
how people refer you out because there's so many businesses now, balloon
Yeah.
businesses now, catering businesses now.
Yeah.
Like, just show up.
Yeah.
Even if you're not doing the work, people remember, like, oh yeah, that crazy chick with the red hair came by and, with the checkered, coat and said hi and asked me how my kids were. I can't believe she remembers that from last year. That's how I build my business, is
Yeah.
just getting out there more so. And that's the fun part. And that's what I teach my girls too, that
Yeah.
are my customer service team. Like, yes, I'll offer discounts for nonprofits and different things like that, but there's also a lot of research. People don't
Yeah.
realize do your
Yeah.
research for some of these nonprofits, because there's a lot of shady stuff,
Yes, it is.
unfortunately, that goes on out there. And but when companies see what they can try to get free or cut out of the budget first, unfortunately, it's balloons. It's, they know that florists aren't going to do that because they know that's more of a hard cost. They're like, oh, well, how much does a bag of balloons cost?
How much
I'm
it
like,
really
you have no
costs and how
idea
much
what
time
goes into it.
it takes.
Yes. Yes. So just know that, especially if you're
Yeah.
in like the decor industry, they're not going to ask a rental place to cut the
No.
cost on the couches they need, or the
No.
chairs or the linens or the tables. Like,
Yeah.
you want your
Yes.
guests to sit down or not, so just know
Hmm.
that you're first on the chopping block. But also, if they want their event to
Yeah.
look pretty and look
They
cool,
have to.
like, this is what
So
it costs,
I'm glad that we've had such an impactful conversation. So one of the things I think I would love to, because I feel like if people are really listening, you've given some really great tips, but I feel that as someone that often watches what's going on in conversation in different types of event, Facebook groups, or even when I go to association meetings and you're talking to people, you're like, oh, that might not sound the best to do. What would you give as some
Yeah.
advice for someone that's looking to overcome some of the pricing challenges that they're having in their business right now?
What I would say is I would make a game plan and figure out, okay, if it's more so that they're
Hmm.
not getting the business they want, when you say pricing challenges, is it more so like
Yeah,
that kind
or
of an
not
aspect?
really
I
feeling
would
like they're
say,
making money. I think that that's what often they feel is like they may have some money coming in, they may be getting a certain amount of bookings. It might not be, 30 or 40 a month, but they're getting some type of bookings, but they really don't feel like they're making any money. So when I think of overcoming challenges, it's
yeah, so
like,
this,
oh, I have
okay,
money coming in, but why do I always feel like I'm still broke?
yes. So this is where you think you know what you're paying for stuff, but you really don't. Write it all out. Get your spreadsheet open, whether like, even if you don't like it, get your spreadsheet open and add it all up. Look at what you're spending on Amazon every month. Look at it all. See what money is, just like your base, even if you're working out of your home, what is your base cost to like just maintain your business? If it's your van payment, if you have a van, if it's your U-Haul cost, average every month, look at all of it, see what you have to make per month to just keep the business afloat, right? And then from there, I would look at your pricing, make sure, like, compare different pricing guides, like look at people's websites, see how they format it, make a very professional pricing guide, have disclosures, have people know that, like, you're a legit business. Make sure you have an LLC, make sure you have insurance, like, have all the things ready to look professional. But then also a lot of it is, if you feel like what you're doing, like, and at that point, once you look at everything, come up with new strategies for marketing. if it's a rebrand, like if you feel like you're not getting enough business, rebrand yourself, come up with a new logo. You're not changing shit. You're you're just come correct. Branding is super important. Consistency is so super, super important. Balloon therapy, our branding has not changed a bit since 6 years ago. We did rebrand once. We changed our smiley slightly, but enough to know like this is us still. People still know like we have our certain style. We're maximalists. Stay true to yourself, stay true to your branding, but also if you don't really have a brand, make one. You need to stand out somehow, and it's got to be. And a lot of our branding came through like my personal style. Like I grew up in the '90s. I was really big into like grunge and rock and art. And our brand developer at the time, she was like, we really need to channel that because all the mom and pop balloons, like nothing's really sexy about it. I'm like, all right, well let's make balloons sexy, but we also want to do kids parties. So let's make, so like let's figure out how to set your business apart and lean into that. But you got to find your niche too. Like you can be the most efficient, but also, if you want to build your business, people need to know that you're efficient, you're on time, you're going to deliver on time. It's going to be perfect. If something happens, you'll come back. Like assurances are there. That's what people need to know is like, yes, they want something beautiful, but it's also got to stay up. It's also got to be done properly. People don't want pumps running in their homes. They don't want that noise. They want you to butterfly in, butterfly out. There it is. Like just figure out if there's things that you can do to make your process more efficient, your time on site more efficient, because time is money. No matter what, time is money. So drawing that in, but really trying to figure out. And I think rebranding for I've coached a couple balloon companies in different cities on like, hey, I want to set myself apart. I was like, okay, show me your branding, show me your Instagram. Like, there's nothing on this that looks any different than any of the other balloon businesses. Find something that you can lean into, and people will be like, whoa, what is happening here? What is this? Oh, cool. Like, stand out in some way, and you can figure it out. You just have to get the right. If you have to pay a little extra to get a person to brand you correctly and come up with the right font, take a social media class. Know how to post. Know when to post. Know how to look at your analytics on when to push posts, when to not. There's little things that don't cost that much. You don't need to advertise through Yelp. You don't need to advertise through some of the like Google will say, hey, I'll put you at the top of the page. But now I know if I look at Google and it says sponsored above it, they may not be the best. But they just paid to be at the top. So once you know that, come correct and don't pay Google. Like just know where you can cut costs, where you can advertise differently. Whether you're in a small town or you're in a big town, DM people, get boots on the ground, go shake some hands, like offer to, give them a discount on their next event, 20% off, never offer more than 20% off. And, and that's like my friends and family where I'm like, okay, I'll cut delivery costs on this, but like, get out there. We even like old school printed out flyers. People like that still. Like it's not. Some people like the non-digital
And I
interaction
think
now.
that that can be
It's
definitely
fine.
even a conversation for another time, because as much as I appreciate social
Oh yeah.
media, I feel that um, it has also robbed people of having overcoming the fear of putting themselves out there. Like, yes, it takes a level of
Yes.
allowing yourself to be seen on Instagram, but when you're out, I'm like, how many people are you walking by day and you're having conversations and you're not even talking? I've
Exactly.
had where someone might be, let's say, a bartender, and they go to their friend's birthday party and they have a bar company. You're like, I feel upset. Like, why didn't they book? I'm like, because you don't talk about your bar services. Like, there's so many people that are undercover business owners,
Oh
and we assume that people know
yeah.
what we do, and they don't know, or they don't
Exactly.
even track where they're getting their leads from, and thinking to themselves, how can I increase that
Yes.
type of stuff either?
You know that's something about you too with your business that stands out, because I have been invited to do lots of these video podcasts and different things, and I rarely do them because I don't have a relationship with that person, right? And you are one of the most consistent people I know too, with like follow ups and and even if your reminders are automated, you're still consistent. And that's with how much I have on my plate. That's the only way I remember people is like consistency. And then the fact you also like came by my office one time and I got to see you in person and know that you're real. And it's like people remember that way more than you think. And I think like at the end of the day, if you like old school sales was boots on the ground. Before Instagram, before Facebook, it was you walking around with your, stuff. And people don't value that enough anymore. Like you don't have to go in and open up your catalog and be like, what do you want out of here? This isn't, you're not trying to sell magazines, but you're just showing that you're a real person and you have a real product and you admire their store, what they're doing. You had to stop in to see their stuff, like you've seen it online, but you had to see it in person. People will remember you that way. Literally, I would say 90% of my clients when I first started was from me meeting them at an event, at a different event. They saw me setting something up and I was chatting with some people on the side, saying hi, and they were like, oh my gosh, I still have old school business cards. Yes, you can do them through your phone and stuff. I can tell people, but I can tell you at least half of my clients now don't have Instagram. Like, they're just old folks that love balloons and think it's beautiful and have a great bank account and got my business card, right? So just reevaluating sales and what it takes. No, you got to get out there. I mean, because it's easy to sit behind and post things, or even just get behind your phone and do a story, which I'm terrible at doing because I hate just like talking to myself in the phone. I need to be so much better about it. Thanks, babe. Chris brought me lunch. um, but that's the part that I think is so important for people. If you feel like what you're doing isn't right, rebrand yourself, get out in the community. Whether it's just stopping by a place, you'll never know. Even if the girl at the small boutique is not the owner, you give her a card and a flyer. She leaves it on the desk, pays no mind, but the owner happens to stop by and is like, "Oh, who is this?" Well, they made the effort to come by. That's big. So we even with balloon therapy, who in Dallas alone we do around 30 events a week, which is insane. Like it's a lot of logistical things. We still make the time to get out in the community, no matter what. And all my installers, anytime they go to any event, if there's another vendor there, they introduce themselves. We help other vendors put stuff up if we can. If we have the time, we help people do other things too. And that has made a huge difference because people will still remember me. They'll remember Trace. They, just because we make an effort to be present and to market ourselves, because you're no better marketing tool than yourself out in the world. So that's important.
That right there is priceless because often people look at me crazy when I'm like, I love to see myself as a hunter. Like I don't
Yes,
like to just wait. I'm like being intentional with interactions, being intentional with getting out there and getting to know people. And when you do have the ability to be in front of people, like are you going to get in your way to say, oh, I don't like talking to people? And that ultimately, so like if someone does the steps you gave about overcoming the pricing challenges, think about now if you're intentional in front of people or the people that you interact with, or if you start to think about how can you start to network with individuals, like it really leads into it, because I would personally not want to necessarily go out and network with bad pricing, because now I'm going to get a whole bunch of people that are underpaying for my services compared to
exactly.
taking
Yes.
heed of what you said about thinking about maybe you might need to rebrand, do a pricing guide, going around and talking. And this, the thing is keeping track of that like cultivating relationships as well, because sometimes they won't always just bite right then. And it's not a I'm not interested, there it's not any other slight. It just might be I don't have a need for you right now. And if you're banking on me remembering, especially if you don't give me a memorable experience that time, I won't, when I'm looking for balloons or if I'm looking for a specific service, I'm just going to then go to Google and try to find someone, because we haven't closed
Exactly.
that gap in between
Yes,
follow up.
100%. Like even to this day, like for New Year's, I did an event for a guy for his restaurant in Dallas like 5 years ago, and he remembers specifically I helped them get a bird out of their cook vent to get that was stuck in there, and randomly because they couldn't figure out how to open up the flume thing to get the bird out, and I was setting up for, and they were having such a hard time, and he was like, I remember that from like 4 years ago. I want to start doing balloons again in my restaurant. Now I own 8 restaurants. Would love for you to go, which is so random, but I remember getting that bird out of there. That was wild. Like, and I'm never doing an event for this guy again. This is crazy. But he remembered it. And at the time, I didn't feel appreciated for it. But now I'm like, okay, all right, you're right. Yeah. I'm also a chimney sweep. So, yes. And if you're shy, I, what I recommend is like find a friend who isn't, and have them wear your business shirt and go with you, and like if you're afraid, just have a wingman that can talk a little bit more than you do. Because some of my friends who are not in the bit can sell my business better than I can. Like, especially one of my best friends is a dentist. We'll be somewhere and she goes, have you seen her shit before? It's crazy. And I'm like, yeah, because I don't talk about it that way anymore, but she does because it's so interesting to her because she's not in the industry. So finding a friend that, will go out with you that's not in your industry, sometimes they have a whole different way to sell your stuff than you could imagine because they're not in it every day. And we just get used to doing the same stuff, and posting the same types of like mini garland. Because back in the day, I used to sell mini garlands, and now it's a huge thing. But we don't really make that much money from them. And yeah, I can post about it, but that's so different than me, you know, trying to mix it up. And yes, consistency is key, but also innovation is key. And if that's just not necessarily reinventing the wheel with balloons, but figuring out a different way to market yourself. And it can be through little things that don't have to cost you anything. But yeah, definitely getting out there is a huge thing to do because if you have the same price as this other company in your town, but you're the one out bebopping around, shaking hands, kissing babies, they're going to come to you before the other person. So that's my biggest advice on pricing. If you're wondering if you're competitive enough or if like, because I know I'm like vaguely going into marketing, but like with pricing, just know your worth, know what your time is worth, reel in your expenses, and check up on your expenses because, like I said, who you're buying from, even Amazon, you'll see where they like cross it like this is on sale or this was this price. Hell no, it wasn't. That's the report. This is $10 more than it was last year. Like I know they're gaining. I was like, that's not. No, like it's wild. It's wild in the streets because even people don't realize the box of like the U glue that I started using initially that a company went in and was able to manufacture more of. How much? Almost like $100 a box for this stuff. And people don't realize how much you have to use for an install if you're using this proper stuff that sticks. That's a lot of money. Like, so, that's another $500 a week for me for all these different installs. That adds up. That's $2,000 a month, which is my payment on 3 vans. So just like think about cost, um, and really figure out your bottom line and what you need to do to maintain. And it's not as hard as you think. I mean, you just have to reel in your costs, know your worth. If you're struggling, rebrand, reinvent yourself. But you don't have to go to Tahiti. Like you don't have to reinvent yourself that way, but like reframe and figure out a better way to get yourself out there. And it works.
Well, thank you so very much for all of these tips. And I can't wait to hear back from a lot of people that are in the industry because, again, these conversations really help people either keep their doors open or they close sooner, because it's money and income and revenue inside of your business is the lifeline, for you to make it to the next year. You just need to know like how much does it really cost for you to really run your business. So Jessi, thank you so very much for being a yes today.
Or of course, Jess. Always love
Awesome.
talking with you.
Awesome.
Anytime.
Well, thank you so very
Anytime.
much. And you have a good one, okay? Talk to you later.
You too,
Bye
Jess. Talk to
bye.
you later.